Hello and welcome. My name is Eric Rossoff, and I'm the Executive Manager of the Career Survival Group. Today we are starting our first in a series called the Career Survivalist. The Career Survivalist is going to be videos and interviews with industry standard experts talking about the most common behaviors and factors that are costing good firefighters their jobs across the country, and what we might be able to do to try to get in front of that curve and stop those things from happening. Before we get into today's segment, what I'd like to do is introduce my training partner, my good friend, Chief Brian Cummings, who will talk a little bit more about who we are at the Career Survival Group and what it is that we're going to be discussing today.
Thank you very much, Eric, and welcome everyone. My name is Brian Cummings. I did 34 years with the Los Angeles City Fire Department, retiring from there in 2013. I made fire chief there in 2011, and the thing that kept me awake at night wasn't the operational risks to my folks, because I knew they were well-equipped and well-trained. What kept me awake was I knew there was some behavior going on in one of my work locations that I wasn't going to hear about for 3 weeks until it was splashed on the front page of the local newspaper or on the nightly news. And that behavior was going to impact the reputation of my agency, the careers of my firefighters, and possibly my career as well. Well, in 2012, Eric presented Career Survival to the Los Angeles Area Fire Chiefs Annual Conference. And I saw right away the value of that training in identifying the common behaviors that our folks engage in, and then getting ahead of those behaviors and keeping them from losing their jobs. Well, I brought his training to my agency before I retired, but when I did retire, Eric was the first phone call I got, and he asked me to come on the road with him. And I've been with him since, crisscrossing North America, speaking to dozens of fire service agencies, thousands of firefighters, and we're having a positive impact on careers. Since about 2009, Eric has been tracking the reasons why firefighters have been losing their jobs. And he's found it's remarkably consistent over the years, those reasons and those behaviors. But in the last month, we've seen a tremendous spike in the number of social media terminations of firefighters. Over 40 firefighters have been terminated in the last month. And we know if we're seeing 40 in the newspaper, that it might be twice, maybe even 3 times more that are out there, and firefighters are losing their jobs. You'd have to be from another planet to have not heard the news coverage and seen the protests around the murder of George Floyd. And our folks are very passionate. They have opinions, and they feel they should post those opinions. Tragically, though, there's 3 major misconceptions that they have when they make those postings, and those misconceptions expose the firefighters' careers to some real risk. Those misconceptions are they feel they have a body of work that insulates them from any possible consequences. They feel they have a First Amendment right to say anything that they want to say on social media. And finally, they feel that they're speaking off duty. They're not even in their uniforms. So as a civilian, as John or Jane Doe Public, they can say whatever they want. We're going to drill down into each of those and speak about why those are pitfalls and landmines that expose our folks' careers to risk. Eric, let's talk about body of work first. I think it's essential that we all understand that all of our fire departments are meaningless without public trust. Public trust is the capital that we trade in. If we lose public trust, we become ineffective as an agency, and we can no longer serve the public. And if one of my firefighters does something that destroys that public trust, my only recourse as the head of the agency is to let that individual go in an effort to gain that trust back. Now let's talk about that first landmine. I have a body of work that proves that this isn't a problem. Eric, can you discuss that?
Yes, absolutely, Brian. As you talked about, for many years, I've been gathering this information, and generally it starts with reading something in a newspaper article or what it might be. And certainly since you've been here, and as we become more recognized throughout the country as the source, for administrative issues, we've been able to just discuss this with fire chiefs that have been involved in situations, even labor groups and firefighters. And when we talk about the body of work, that's a pretty prevalent defense when somebody's been handed a piece of paper that says you don't work here anymore, related to social media or any other type of termination. The firefighter will say, I have public trust because I have a body of work that's obviously shows that I've earned public trust. And they'll say, if you go back at all and say, when the bells go off, I go do my job, and I do it incredibly well, and I'm colorblind. I don't care who you are, what you look like, what you believe. When the bells go off, I do my job, I do it well, that's my body of work, I've earned public trust. Well, across the board, what the courts have been very consistent on this, when that has been issued, that comes up as a defense to get their jobs back. The courts have been very consistent about this. What they have said is your body of work, that's who you were. And what you just said on social media, that's who you are right now. And who you are right now is someone that compromised public trust. I can't tell you how many times, Brian, and you and I have commented about this many times. You'll read an article about a firefighter that's lost their job, social media or one of those other behaviors. And the first part will be why they lost their job. But then this, third paragraph will talk about the history of the firefighter, firefighter of the year. I've even read about Medal of Valor winners, that are now getting a piece of paper that says you don't work here anymore. Trainers, all the certificates you could possibly have. And the last thing, is the legacy of their career in fire service is a piece of paper that says you don't work here anymore because you violated public trust. It's important, a couple parts of this is the first one is your body of work, that's who we expect you to be. Your body of work is why you're getting a paycheck. We expect you to be extraordinary, folks, because you're firefighters. But if you do something that violates public trust, and again, it's essential for firefighters to understand, we don't decide what public trust is. The public will decide what public trust is. You can use it to try to get your job back, but it's not going to stop the agency from giving you a piece of paper that says you don't work here anymore.
I think firefighters don't understand the amazing amount of accountability and consequences to what they say. In fact, they get into those little battles. Someone will post something on social media, and because our folks have strong opinions, they might think, you know what, that's just stupid. And the person on the other side says, hey, you know what, I'm not stupid, you're stupid. And they get a little stupid off back and forth. But the firefighter doesn't realize the person that they're in that stupid off with is sitting in their basement of their mother's house and has zero accountability and zero consequences for any rant that they put on social media. But that person that's saying it, that firefighter, has tremendous accountability and tremendous consequences because of the public trust that's put into them. And then it'll escalate, their little thumb battle will escalate, and then they'll drop in something about ethnicity or race or gender. And that would lead somebody in our community that's that ethnicity, race, or gender to believe that firefighter's not going to come out and serve me like they would somebody else. And that destroys public trust. And again, as an executive, my only way to get public trust back is by sacrificing that firefighter and letting them go. You have tremendous accountability for what you say, professional standards. Be careful what you post. Eric, the next thing I hear from firefighters is, you know what? I have a First Amendment right to post anything I want on social media. Can you address that for a second?
Absolutely, Brian. And, I think firefighters, and you can see this happening, right? Say, well, I've got a First Amendment right to say anything I want to say on social media. I have an opinion and I want to express it. And the First Amendment guarantees that I can express that opinion. And again, it's a landmine. Because we get into this false sense of security. And I believe it's just based on the fact that we're not doing a good job as a profession of getting the information out, the dangers out to everybody so they can learn from others. So we're in this little bubble kind of within ourselves or our own agency saying, well, I have a First Amendment right. As a matter of fact, you and I have joked about it, Brian, about that unofficial title. I think LA City Fire had a couple of these, the station house lawyer.
Absolutely.
That person that's sitting at the coffee table, at the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee, going, "Go ahead, kid. They can't do anything to you about it. You got a First Amendment right." Yeah. And you always notice how it's the station house lawyer that's not doing the thing. The station house lawyer is like trying to get somebody else to do the thing. So.
That's it. Free advice and worth every penny.
Exactly right. Well, and here's what the courts have said, and it's important, like every other aspect of fire service, learn lessons from other people that have had misfortunes. And the lesson here is that the courts have been very consistent. And they said, obviously, you didn't waive your rights when you became a firefighter. You absolutely have a First Amendment right to post anything that you want to post on social media. However, firefighters are being incredibly reckless with their careers if they think then the First Amendment will shield what they just said from the agency then reviewing it. What the courts have said is the First Amendment right stops right after you posted it. That was you availing yourself to that right. You posted it, but then it goes away. And now that thing is out there. And the agency can and will review what you just said and weigh it against agency expectations of maintaining public trust. Across the board, the First Amendment has been a loser in people trying to get their jobs back related to social media posts.
Eric, the last landmine is off-duty behavior. Firefighters will walk up to me and say, Chief, how can what I do in my civilian clothes as John or Jane Doe public, how can those behaviors possibly impact my career status with my fire department? Eric, can you discuss off-duty behavior?
Absolutely. And Brian, this is one of those ones that I think is a important training moment because it's not unreasonable for some of our employees to think what I do on my own time, is my time. And there's no nexus between that and the agency. And the critical element that's missing is that thread of public trust. And how that thread of public trust then ties your off-duty behavior to your agency. Generally speaking, across the country, that if you do get that piece of paper that says you don't work here anymore, the path to try to get your job back comes through arbitration and or the courts. And both arbitrators and the courts have kind of developed this three-pronged test to see if there is a nexus between your off-duty behavior and your job. And this is actually only for cops and firefighters. It's related to safety employees that need public trust. It's actually three questions. And if the answer to any one of these questions is yes, then there is a nexus between your off-duty behavior and your job. The first question is pretty simple. Does your agency have a policy that touches on off-duty behavior? Most of our agencies do have a policy that's akin to conduct unbecoming, and it talks about a whole myriad of things, but basically it all does come back to public trust. Is what you've done off-duty, can that somehow or another have an impact on public trust related to our agency? So that's the first question. The second question is, can the off-duty behavior impact the reputation of the agency? And I think this is one of those real problem areas for firefighters. They get lulled into a false sense of security because they'll say, hey, wait a minute, all the oxygen free. There's nothing on my social media that would let anybody know that I'm actually a firefighter. So I can say whatever, because there's no possible impact on the reputation of the agency. And this is what we offer people in our trainings, right? Is listen, if your chief is reading your social media post, somebody knew, and it only takes the one that's out there, that somebody knew that you were connected to the agency, and this is what you just said on social media. And when you think about social media and the multiplier that it is once it gets out there, how far it can possibly reach before somebody can put it together that you're a member of the agency, and with an internet connection and your name, it doesn't take me too long because there's a newspaper article or something somewhere, a roster that's been posted on the internet that has your name on it. And even those kind of, sneaky, firefighters that will put on a mask and say, oh, I'm not Eric Rossoff, I'm Rarick Kossoff, and they will do something along the way to try to, be anonymous. I think that's, it's just a dangerous ledge to be on versus understand that your agency's reputation is the difference between you having a job or not having a job. Nobody's trying to take your opinions away from you. Nobody's trying to, suppress First Amendment rights. We're just trying to impress upon you that there is a nexus between your social media presence and your job. The last of the questions, and this is the one I think is the actually simplest route from off-duty behavior to your job, is the question will be, does the post impact the ability of the firefighter to do their job or their perception of the firefighter's ability to do their job? And once again, we, regardless of what it might be, whatever we've just put out there is, or very easily could be, construed to be derogatory or some type of an indication that you have a bias against a segment or segments of our community. And then I have members of that segment or segments that are saying, man, it sounds like this firefighter doesn't like me too much. And if the bells go off, they might not come out and do their job. And there it is. That's all we need to get over. Now, the chief is reading about that, saying that is public trust has been compromised. Here's a piece of paper that says you don't work here anymore. And now you can fight to try to get your job back. And, it's any type of fight to try to get your job back is an 18-month, 24-month, real difficult, stressful time for everybody. And you're probably not going to win. So at the end of the day, what we're all talking about here is be aware of these landmines. Number one, your body of work is irrelevant when it comes to getting a piece of paper that says you don't work here anymore. The First Amendment does not protect you from what you're putting out on social media. And third, it's irrelevant if the post was on or off duty. As a matter of fact, I don't have any direct statistics on this, but I'm going to tell you on a very good educated guess that at least 75, if not 95% of the social media related cases that we're reading about were probably off-duty behavior. It's irrelevant whether or not it was on or off duty. It's the fact that the nexus between you and the agency and the post. So please, you and the people around you, avoid these landmines.
Eric, and we've discussed this a bunch of times, but is there any doubt at all that some of these individuals that post these inappropriate things on social media were probably saying the exact same thing around a fire station, around other firefighters, possibly around their supervisor, and there were absolutely zero consequences? They were inappropriate social media posts, but they were also inappropriate because they were against the policy to be saying inside a station. But because there was no consequences, perhaps we've emboldened those individuals to think, hey, if it's okay to say it here in the station with cap around, then why would I think I can't say it on social media?
That's an excellent point, Brian. As a matter of fact, because of this spike of social media related terminations, most of these firefighters aren't going to go quietly into the night. They're going to aggressively fight to get their jobs back. And you watch, that's going to be a defense sooner or later. That the firefighter, who's on this plane that's spiraling down, is going to grab an officer and bring them with him. Give me that parachute. We're both going to take a hit on this, because their argument is going to be, we have a policy about workplace environment, and there's certain things that we're not supposed to say or do, but we do it all the time inside the work, and nobody cares about it. So why would I think anybody would care about what I put on social media? And then those captains inside the fire stations that are going to get exposed to this, it's not going to help the firefighter get their job back. It's just going to increase the amount of people that are getting fired as a result of it. Because, Brian, I imagine the years that you spent as a captain inside a fire station, your focus is protecting your folks, obviously, but that's not just operationally. There's an administrative part of that as well. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, protecting our folks administratively is one of those gaps that we leave in the emphasis that we need to have. But it's so critical that we focus on it, because far too many firefighters, good men and women, are losing their jobs from behaviors that we can get ahead of and we can prevent.
All right. I think that wraps it up for now. We absolutely hope that you found some value in this. Please, you can get a hold of us if you're interested at all at careersurvivalgroup.com and see the types of services that we offer and training that we offer. We're incredibly proud that we just completed our 101st agency-wide training across the country, from Toronto to San Diego, from Orlando to Seattle. As Chief Cummings says, we've had the chance to work with now well over 100 fire agencies and talk to thousands of firefighters. We're flattered to be getting very positive feedback, and many of our agencies now are repeat agencies having us come back. So this is just another way we're hoping that we can get the message out in a sincere effort to try to keep our folks on the job. First, let's go home at the end of the shift. Let's make sure that nobody gets hurt. But second, let's get to our retirement, because that you're all out there doing incredibly dangerous work that other people in our communities either can or can't do. Please, let's just get to that retirement that you've earned.
Absolutely, folks. Be safe, be good to each other, and every now and then tell some folks to knock it off.
Thank you very much.